From years of anxiety to warrior and mentor, Bradley Robinson created the Anxiety Project to help you end your anxiety naturally. Let's mold the new you and let's end anxiety together.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. Welcome to episode 327. I'm Brad Robinson, and today I'm talking about the 5 big reasons why people can't make this change. They promise themselves that they want to better themselves in such and such a manner or get out of the suffering that they're currently in, trying to find some meaning in their life, and then they can't get there. But I guess that's a really important part is making that decision. Why are you really deciding to make a change? And that is a very intimate and, what would you say, that's a very overwhelming moment, because you are acknowledging that the place you are currently inhabiting is very, not good. And it's you have to understand why it's not good, but by having this conversation with yourself. Why do I want to change? What is it about the present moment that is making me feel uneasy and uncomfortable? What am I not facing? And then what's this vision? Having an idea of where you want to go. So we're diving into the main reasons why people can't make any change. And the first reason is they're unable to face the discomfort of their own minds. Yes, their own minds, their insecurities, their traumas, their wasted time. That's a very deep cut, acknowledging that you've squandered and lived on Pleasure Island for a good amount of time, living in unconsciousness, living in a bubble. And that's a harsh realization, but it's a necessary one. A lot of people who overcome this look back and say, man, I'm really glad I went through that suffering because it made me who I am today. And that's the right attitude, right? It's the reframing of, well, if I didn't go through that muck, then I wouldn't be this person that I am today. And that's the right attitude. So you have to work through weaknesses and you have to build strength from square one. You have to start from scratch. Now, what does it mean to face the discomfort of your own minds? Well, you have to build new circuits. You have to build competent circuits over the it circuits that you've built up, the circuits that you've entertained for a long time, which have been practiced for a long time. So the body reflexively wants to go back to what's easy, what's convenient, what's familiar to you. And most people become stuck in a very, what would you say, well, a reflexive and a convenient way of going about the world. So, for example, you always tend to flop on the TV at a moment's notice, or you reach for the cigarettes, or you eat a certain type of food that you shouldn't be eating. And this circuit builds and builds because it's giving you some sort of satisfaction, whatever that is. And it's like a fire blanket, right? But it doesn't necessarily extinguish the fire. You'd say the fire comes back well, it comes back when that discomfort starts to sizzle and rise again to the surface. So we tend to what's convenient, the easy road, because the mind likes that. It wants to stay in what's familiar. And think about it biologically and how we evolved to who we are today. We 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 find refuge in the tribe. We find refuge in what's familiar, of this place that we've mastered. and the place that we master in these days include things like going to the store and vaping, and buying those cigarettes and getting the junk food and staying up till 2 a.m. And we kind of have a relationship with this. We have a relationship with this time to ourselves. We're staying up till 2, watching our favorite show. It becomes a part of us, and it becomes a part of the ego, who we think we are. Who we think we are. What are we this? Are we this exactly? And the thing about it is, the wise person always starts off their spiritual journey with that question, like questioning, is this really fulfilling me? What am I doing here right now? And I've had these moments in my 20s where I was engaging in these behaviors, pornography, smoking pot. I would come to these moments of, well, what am I doing? Like, with who am I really? Who's doing this right now? Who's thinking these thoughts? Who's controlling me in these urges? And that was a very daunting thing. You know, we attach a lot of meaning to these things because of that comfort that it brings. It brings us that excitement. It sparks, it lights up our brains. But at the end of the day, what happens when you start to come down from the spark? The spark is not sustaining. It's not sustaining you. It's not giving you that long-term meaning. It's You can then notice the problems that these habits produce, and then that, again, well, if your eyes are open, shocks you. It shocks you. And you don't realize it a lot of the time, right? Because you engage in these habits, and then later down the road, months down the road, you're like, "Oh my God, look where it's gotten me." And why does it get to this point? That's what I always try and, grapple with on this show. How does it get there? What's happening? We get there because it's, well, like I said, it's not a long-term solution. But when you're engaging with marijuana, your tolerance to this increases, and then you have to spend more time and resources, energy, to acquire more of this transcendental, or spiritual. I like to think of these things as spiritual because they're out of us. We get caught up in the moment. We get caught up in the experience, and the experience is very short lived, but the pursuit is never ending. Like, you're chasing something that you can't grab, or you can't hold in your hands. It's like water through your hands. And that's what's so scary about it. That's what happened in my 20s, is I realized that, the negative sides to these habits were much greater than what I was trying to seek within the habits. And that's a horrible thing to realize. You wake up one day overly tired, overweight, or thinking like you've defiled yourself because you've had no self control, whether it's around sex or pornography or whatever. You shock your own self because when you dabble in this novelty, you're always on the edge, and you're pushing yourself further over the edge to find to find more of the novelty. That's the problem, is because we become so familiar with this novelty, we're pushing ourselves more and more to find the where the edge meets the other side of that novelty, right? That's a very shocking thing. The second reason why people can't change is sacrifices are insufficient. You're not getting enough out of well, maybe you're not even sacrificing much. at all. Like me in my 20s, I wasn't doing any sacrificing. You sacrifice the present moment for long-term gain. You sacrifice the immediate pleasures, the whims of the moment for something long term because you know that you're going to get some sort of reward as a consequence if you sustain yourself from that chocolate cake, or you're sustaining yourself from that night out with friends, or with the alcohol, or you get the idea. And so the interesting thing about sacrifice is that we could be think well, for me, like this has happened many times where I'd go to the gym and I feel like, I'm going to the gym, at least I'm, getting my, 30 minutes workout in, and then later, realizing, well, I'm not really, you come into contact with somebody who's going to the gym for an hour and an hour and a half or 2 hours, and you're like, whoa, it's like they could expose you, and they expose your inadequacies. And the reason why it gets to me, because I'm like, yeah, I could do better. I could push the boundaries. I'm just staying in a safe place. I'm staying comfortable. Even today, I'm always thinking like, oh no, am I comfortable here? Oh no. If because once that lack of meaning rises to the surface, it is not a pleasant thing to contend with. But if you are that person with that mindset of, well, I need to learn and grow, then you are much more willing to confront that. So think of the Cain and Abel story, where Cain is making sacrifices up to God. He's sacrificing the vegetables, the vegetation that he's producing on his, you know, I guess, land, you can say. And then Abel is sacrificing his most prized lamb. His most prized meat. And that's an interesting thing because meat is of high value. So you can look at it like, well, what's of high value to you now? Is your Xbox something of high value? Your phone, social media, cigarettes, pornography? You hold these things to a certain standard, right? Because what you pay attention to the most determines the value put on that thing. So that's a very shocking thing to realize. What are you valuing? What are you attending to? Are you attending to something that's short term, that you're going to need more and more and more of, that seems like it's never ending? Or do you want something in the present moment that can bring you peace? What is that? Well, first you got to give up the thing that you think is keeping you stuck, stagnant, is not serving you. And then you have to replace it with something else. First, you got to face that discomfort, though. You decide not to engage. Okay. But what then you do is notice the discomfort. Recognize that the body is going to encounter short-term pain, but the pain is short. And then the what would you say, the pleasure will come because of the separation. And I experienced this with many things, the things that I thought I could never break in my life. And then once I did, and I went a week without it, I realized that, well, first, I can live my life without this thing. And then second, I have a different perspective when I would go back to it, because I would eventually go back to it and see it in a different light, because you're coming at it from an outsider. It's like you've gone out into the woods and confronted the bear, and you've come back a new person, right? You've gone over this hump, this short-term pain. You're coming back to what you've known, but what you've known is different now. That's like Pinocchio going out into the world, encountering all this malevolence, building on his competency, bravery, And then he returns home, and his home is not the same. His father's missing. It's not what the comfort and safety is not there anymore. And then what do? First of all, it's like a really strong, awareness. You are encountering, you're expecting the nostalgia almost, but it's not there. It's not there. You're a different person. You're coming back with a new frame, and you see things more sharply, I would say, more sharply. And it's a very powerful thing to experience in your life. And you're coming back from this journey into the unknown, but beyond what you already know. That's the thing about sacrificing, is you're sacrificing your familiar territory with something uncertain. And then once you confront the uncertainty, you come back into what's familiar, a different person, willing to step outside again. You're more willing, you're more competent. You realize, there's the answers are going to be out there. And so when people reach a stagnancy, it's always because they're in a comfort of some sort. This is the problem, is even if you've gone to the gym months, it's like, that's great. You've already improved. But now you're comfortable at the gym. Uh-oh. Oh no. What are you going to do now? You got to push yourself a little bit more. Spend an extra 5-10 minutes there. You have to show yourself that you are, well, you have to branch out into the unknown, and the unknown is always uncomfortable because we have our routines that are nice. They're nice, comforting, but that's not where the growth happens, unfortunately. The third reason why people can't change is they don't have a vision. There's no clear direction in their mind. Now you have to subject yourself to those who have a direction that resonate with you. That's a big thing. You have to relate to somebody. You have to talk to them. If it's on a YouTube channel, send them a message. Send me a message. I want to hear what you're going through. Do you not have a vision? You not have a vision? Well, let's create one. How do you create a vision? Well, you got to think, well, what do you want 3 to 6 months from now? Like, where do you want to go? Where do you see yourself going? What does your body look like? What do you want to look like down the road? How do you want your relationships to be, or your job? Family life, relationship with your spouse, relationship with your friends. What do you want to do on your spare time? What are you passionate about? And that's the thing though. I could never answer that one. It was always difficult. What am I passionate about? The thing is, once I started to grow, I became passionate about growing, which is so funny, right? Because you're like, where do I start? Where do I start? And the best advice I've ever gotten is to look to your immediate surroundings if you don't know where to go. And I talked about this on a podcast recently. You have to look to your surroundings. Okay, well, where can I start? Where can I start? Well, is there something in your bedroom? I'm sure there is. I'm sure there's something in your bedroom that you can attend to. You have to build on your competency through small micro goals, and they lead you to larger ones. They always do. Number 4 is you're waiting for change. This is big because we think that there's going to be some sort of sign from the heavens above of when, I'll know it when I see it. But that's the thing about a tyrannical self. I like to view myself, my older self, as Well, a tyrannical self. Why is it tyrannical? Is because you are attending to your needs, your whims, your desires constantly. So when a miracle pops up, do you think you're gonna see it if you're all inside and in the self, in the ego? Of course, you're not gonna see that miracle. Of course, you're not gonna see that sign. What you need to do is you need to get up when you don't want to get up. You get up early. You have to face discomfort every single day. So think of the Cain and Abel story again. Cain spends a lot of time brooding over Abel's success. While he could be humble about it and say, well, hey, look, maybe there's something I can learn from this guy. I'm just not getting to where I need to be in my life. So he decides to instead spend time with himself and brood over his self-inflicted, ego-centered, bitter thoughts. Not a good place to be at all. Number 5 is you say things that make you feel weak. You can't change if you're constantly making excuses. You're talking about how life's rough, how you got it bad. I had a friend like that, and it was really exhausting to hear the long laundry list of problems that he was having. And it wasn't just the one time, it wasn't just the couple times that I would see him, but it was every time. And it was exhausting because I'd bring my wife around him, and then it was tough. It was tough because those types of people feed off of, what would you say, the energy, the resources, the battery that you already have running inside of you. So yeah, definitely not a good thing. Definitely not. And you talk about how life's rough, right? So how you got it bad. And people want, what would you say? People want the best from you. People want to solve your problems. That's another thing why it drains your batteries, is because people want to solve your problem and they want to help you. People, their natural tendency is to help. And when you're always coming around with problems, you eventually realize that this person isn't looking for help. They're just here to vent because you've offered them advice. They don't take it. They seem to take it, but at the end of the day, if they can't help themselves, how on earth are you going to help them? It's rough. It's rough. And we resort back to old ways because it's what's familiar, like I touched on, and it's well practiced. And environmental factors trigger the desire for old destructive habits. So there's this great metaphor about the recovering alcoholic who comes back home from the rehab center, but then all the triggers are there. You have to scrub the place clean of any alcohol. You have to walk a different way home from work because you maybe there's so many triggers, right? The text messages could trigger you from friends, and the way you drive home from work can trigger you because you usually tend to the bar when on your way home, or there's so many things that can get you. Certain music can trigger you. And I found going through my recovery that I had to change a lot of things in my life. The music that I was listening to, I had to change friends, and I had to change up my routine completely by getting up earlier in the mornings and incorporating walks, meditation, and breathing. And cold showers. You really have to change your identity through the habits. And that was uh, on my previous podcast. I think it was episode 200 or 324. Yeah, 324. So go check that one out. Changing your identity. And so you have to really reinvent the wheel of yourself. People don't change is because they they feel they are in comfort. Unfortunately, they're in comfort, and the way out is through voluntary confrontation to what they don't want. I've had many clients that have fallen out of routine, unfortunately. And at the beginning, the routine doesn't seem to work, and that's why they fall out of it. And it's a tough thing because it's like everything. If you go to the gym for the first time and you're overweight, you're expecting to see yourself lose weight in like a week. Like that's your mentality. The gym is exciting. Well, as soon as you get there, you're a week, you're like, you know what, I'm going to become this gym person. And then a week goes by and you look in the mirror and you're like, I don't think I lost any weight. Like that's going to be your mentality. And then what are you going to do at that point? Right? It's like, well, you gotta make it your identity. You gotta make it your identity. So yeah, you have to persist through that momentary discomfort because you are going to experience this cognitive dissonance, thinking, feeling, acting in a manner you're not accustomed to whatsoever. But you build on the identity through repetition, through persistence. It's so easy for me to say this, but don't give up. Don't give up right away. But again, at the end of the day, I'm here talking on this podcast. You have to do the work. I'm going to give you and guide you. And you are a part of this community by listening to this. And that's the great thing. You're part of this community. You want to get better. You're looking. And so I say to you, get up early. Do something difficult. Even when you don't want to. And you'll find God. I saw this great video from Chris Pratt. He was talking about how he went to bed depressed and he was feeling lazy, and he woke up feeling depressed, and he was like, I just didn't want to do anything, and he felt like that if he would go on his run in the woods, he would feel better. And then he forced himself to go for this run in the woods. And then he said, not only did he feel better afterwards, he said he had an encounter with God in the woods. He had this moment, this revelation. It struck him. And I love that because that's what happens. We feel like, I don't want to get up today. It's rainy, it's cold, it's this, it's that. And look, I get it. I have many of those days. I just had one of those days the other day. And I went to the gym anyways. And by the end of it, you're like, man, I'm glad I came here because it would have haunted me the whole day. Oh, why didn't you go to the gym? And then you're strengthening this circuit that says, F it. F it. Don't go. You're not feeling well. I'm so afraid of that haunting that I'm willing to, go for that hour of discomfort than to spend that whole day thinking, what if? What if I went? What if? Why didn't I go? Oh no. You're falling back into old patterns, the person that you don't want to be. And that's where I'm going to leave you today on this podcast episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening today. I'm so grateful for you. And make sure you go check out my anxiety recovery program on my website at unpluganxiety.com. I'm sure you're going to find it useful because I created this program because of the things that have helped me during my anxiety recovery. It has a journal where you are able to write out a plan for the future, which is so necessary. Where are you going to go? Where's that vision? Where's that vision? So that's in the program, as well as guided meditation, releasing trauma. It's so crucial that you do that. And I have a Know Your Brain audiobook, so you understand the brain and why it's operating the way it is, why you're so anxious, why you're so neurotic, or what would you say? Why are the negative thoughts so prominent? So I highly recommend that. Rise above anxiety. I'll see you next time.
Brad's powerful anxiety recovery program is now available at unpluganxiety.com. The Anxiety Project program is downloadable and puts the power of anxiety recovery in your own hands. Visit unpluganxiety.com for more details. Recovery